So, where do producers get their story ideas from? Well, let's find out. So, a while back, there was sort of a problem with television news in that every story or every newscast would begin with death, destruction, and violence, and it was getting pretty depressing. And so, at one point, there was a journalist named Eric Pulley, and he worked for the New York Magazine, and he wound up publishing an article called "If It Bleeds, It Leads." And he was really angry about the quality of stories that were always just the first stories were like so many people died, so many people were shot, so much death happened, so much destruction happened. And it seemed like stations were going out of their way to find these gory stories because they believed that's what people wanted to watch. And so he said that he thought, that thoughtful reports were buried because sensationalism were what launched the newscast. And so this kind of caused an evolution in the late 80s, early 90s, and how television news started presenting. So they started moving away from the concept of if it bleeds, it leads. If there's chaos and destruction, that's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about every single night. Now, they do understand that there are cycles of news, that there is going to be massive categories and times where something destructive, something chaotic is going to happen. And stations will lead with that because it is newsworthy, but they're not using death, destruction, and violence as a major criteria, as opposed to more of the content of what's going on in the news. And so when you're a producer, you're going to wind up starting your show with kind of a concept of what your newscast might look like. It's not always going to be a blank slate that you have to have only a few hours to fill up a 30-minute show. You're going to have a concept or a basic idea of what's going on in the world of news, and some of that's going to be going on into your show. You're also going to have some help from some other people. And so one of the things that's going to help you out is there is a board that's going to be posted in the newsroom. And this is called the assignment board. And this talks about stories that are happening throughout the day and even which reporters are covering them. So if you're producing the 10 o'clock show, you can walk in and look at your assignment board and you can see, well, 5 o'clock did a package about a used book sale going on at campus. Well, there was a fire at the dining hall on the university campus, and Frank Payne did a live shot of it. And then at 6 o'clock, Frank Payne was able to also get a VOSOT from the event. And so they were able to provide you with that. 6 o'clock also had Ernie Powell doing a story about a new Publix grocery store coming into the local community. So we know at 10 o'clock that we're going to have some more information about the dining hall fire. And V. Bailey is going to provide us with that. They're going to give us a package that's probably going to take about a minute and a half. And they're going to have student responses talking about the student perspective of the fire. At 10 o'clock, with the new Publix coming into town, there's been a homeless issue that has been arriving. A Taylor has a package on that. And then always for our 10 o'clock near the end, we're going to have a health minute that's going to fill up our show. And usually it's going to be a VO feed story that's going to come in, and we've got this one's going to talk about a new sleeping aid. So right off the bat, we've already got at least 3 stories that we know are going to fill our show. We've also got weather, we've got sports, and they're going to fill up some time as well. So one of the people who's going to help you out is going to be this person behind the desk, and some people that are going to be helping them. But this is the assignment manager, and they are a valuable source of information because they are listening and monitoring all sources of information. So they can kind of look around and you can see that there's monitors above the assignment editor from different stations, so they can look and see what other competition is looking at, what other stations are talking about. If one of the ABC channels suddenly starts talking about the collapse of a building, well, that's going to get his attention, and he's going to ask the producers and reporters if they want to start covering this. Likewise, they've got employees that are going to help them that are monitoring social media. So the digital producers are checking out what's happening in the world of internet, online, to see if there's any news and information that's going on as well. And the assignment manager is also has the responsibility of assigning reporters to jobs. So if there is a building collapse, the assignment manager can find which reporter is currently available or which reporter is near the story, and they can send them over to cover that. So the assignment manager is going to be a valuable tool for gathering information. And so this was one of the assignment boards that was at a local TV station, where they could have a list of the stories, what day it was going to be covered for what event, what newscast it was going to go on. And then you can also see that they had plotted out which reporters were going to cover the stories and how long that reporter was going to be gone. So even a reporter might be able to cover 2 or 3 stories a day if it's something as quick as just going and getting VOs. If it's going to be a package, then that may take up well of the day for the reporter. And then as technology got better, the assignment manager's board has shifted from a dry erase marker driven to a digital one. So again, the producers and assignment managers can quickly type some information in. It goes right up to the digital assignment board, and this is probably something that even reporters and videographers can see on their phone, and they can just quickly glance to see if something has changed or if they need to go cover a particular story. So a lot of times as a producer, you're going to have some ideas of what's going on in and around your community and in and around your station. And there's always going to be national news that's going to help you out. So producers will kind of start by making a list of stories that's going on in their community. So for a producer, for local us, we might see that the Troy Country Club is making news. There's a school bond issue, roadblocks. There was a house fire this morning. The city is changing dog licensing. There was a suicide reported. There was a robbery, and there's something with veterans doing a protest. So all these stories were happening local. Some of it was pre-arranged, like the veterans protesting, or this country club or the school bond issue were planned out well in advance. Things like the house fire and the suicide and the robbery were more spontaneous news. So you've got to be able to look at the various sources and see what you want to do. On the international front and national news, well, the president was able to get both sides of Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats, to reach compromises on a new deal for rebuilding the infrastructure for the United States. We want to get an update on coronavirus. The vaccine has been out for a while. How is that people, how are they handling that? Is the virus still on the rise? Is it being diminished? We'll talk about that. It looks like that the Taliban is starting to take control over parts of Afghanistan. So this might be some national or international news that we want to see. It's been 6 months since we've had the Capitol riot. So where are we at the half-year mark since it happened? Or we're actually a little bit over 6 months. There's recently been discovered hundreds of unmarked graves up in Canada. And so this is causing a lot of people to want to find out a little bit more about it. And then also over the night, there was a collapse at an apartment building in Florida, which still had many people inside of it at the time. So this is currently breaking news that we're still trying to get some more information about. So as a producer, you must first be able to look at a wide variety of sources for news content and evaluate that content and how to best present it. So you can't just have a show filled with nothing but copy or nothing but packages. You've got to find and determine which types of stories are going to be best told with which media types of story. So you need to find out if something is better off as a package or as a VO or as a SOD. Now, the other thing is, on a minimum level, The producers must figure out how to stretch the news to fill your allotted time. If you've got a 30 or 35-minute show, you need to make sure you have enough content to fill that window. Or if you've got a really busy day with lots and lots of news, you've got to figure out how to take 45 minutes worth of information, squeeze it down into a 30-minute show. And so you got to work on finding the different sources, evaluating what's the most important if you have to kill something, or if there's something more important that you have to kill your first story to get your second story more important. So these are going to be aspects as a producer that you're going to have to rely on. And remember that things like your readers are going to be 10 seconds, your packages are 15, your VOs and your SOTs are going to run 15 to 30, your VOSOTs, when you combine them, you can now take up to a minute. Packages can run a minute 15 to 2.5. You've also got live shots that can also take up lots of time if you need to stretch something out. And when you're dealing with news, you always want to start right at your own 2 feet. That's where your local news happens, and then you start moving out. So a lot of people who are watching your news are going to be local to your area. And in the case of Troy, we have people who want to know what's happening in and around Troy. So that's going to be our first primary range of news. And then we'll go a little bit further. We'll move into Alabama. We might then move into Southeast. We might then go into national news of what's happening across the country. And then we might spread it all the way out to international news in the rest of the world. So we usually start local and then move out. And then, of course, there's always changes to this. Nothing is ever permanently set in stone. So, for example, local may be more important than fatal if it's away. Something, an example would be if our chancellor flew to China for a graduation and there was a plane accident and he died. Well, in this case, since he applies to us at the university on the local level, we would lead with that information, even though the story happened across the country in China. That might be more of like a national news. So you have to kind of evaluate what's more important and what order stories should be in as a producer. And so now that you kind of know the basic building blocks for a newscast, and kind of that you should start at where your feet are and then start moving out, kind of helps you give you a range and a perspective of what order to put shows in. So when we pick up, we're going to talk a little bit more about producing